My name is Javasia, and welcome to my page. I am a child of God and a mother and a hairstylist and a wife. But more importantly, I am a friend of God. I want to encourage you all through my testimony of how the Lord delivered me in 7 days in a week. I've been on a water fast. So for 3 days, I have been without food and I only drink water, for this is what the Lord had required of me. And throughout my life, from the age of 7, the enemy had sought out to destroy me, to deceive me into deceive me. The enemy had been he had been fighting to kill me from a very young age. I experienced molestation at 7 years old from a man, or a young man, that was in our church. And in this moment, from the young age of 7 years old, I thought that sex is what validated you, because in that moment, although he had did things that defiled me, he validated me. He told me that I was beautiful. He told me that I was a princess, which is something that I already knew. I already knew that I was beautiful. I already knew that I was a princess, so much in fact that I would go around my church declaring, "Hi, my name's Javasia. I'm a princess." That is how I would introduce myself. But the enemy plants seeds of deception. And I want to warn you all of the seeds of deception that may have been planted in your life, and how God can deliver you from them, but also how you need to seek God's face and read his word and what he says about you. So from that moment, that planted a seed of perversion, which grew and grew. Growing up, I was never a girl that could fit in. I was raised in the church. My mother also had me at a very young age, and I was the only child. So going to school, I could never fit in. I was always called the church girl. I was, in fact, I didn't have many friends. I was always the outsider, the outlier. And there were some moments in my childhood that I can remember where I just felt so alone. And I looked at the other children, and they were rewarded for what made them fit in was their bad behavior. They were just so cool, and I wanted to be like the world, because the world was rejecting who I was. So from that moment on, I made the decision to try and be like the world, to try to be unlike what God had created me to be, which is set apart. So I spent my younger years trying to be like the world, rather that be, going from a and B student to just not trying in my classes, to cursing, to trying to do anything to fit in, to sexual immorality. I was sexually assaulted but a few times, but my decisions ended me up in the places where I was sexually assaulted because I was trying to be in the world. And so by the time that I was 15 years young, I was ready. So by the time that I was 15 years young, I was ready to take my life. And I decided to take muscle relaxers, a bottle of them. In fact, I said, I don't want to wake up because the world had rejected me. Men had rejected me. I was dealing with this spirit of rejection, and now depression from the sexual assault, and now depression and anxiety from keeping the secrets of molestation in me from being a child. And it all felt heavy. I felt alone. I felt misunderstood. So I took a bottle of muscle relaxers, and I'm still in the church. And the next day was a day that, I was 14 years old. And the next day, I could barely keep my eyes open. And I slept the whole day. I remember being at my cousin's house, and she was so worried about me, asking me what was wrong and was there anything she could do. And I was tired. I did not tell her what I had done. But God, he always finds a way, right? So that night was kids' church, which means that the children in the church were due to lead the worship team. They were called to speak up at on the altar, and my mother wanted me, encouraged me, made me go up on the altar and lead worship. And I'm looking at her like, Mother, I could barely keep my eyes open. And once I sat down, she knew, and she asked me, what is wrong with you? And I said, nothing. My mother is a praying woman, and she's also a prophet, so there's really no secrets in our household. And she said, no, something is wrong with you. I'm taking you to the hospital. And that's when I told her everything. I told her, that I had taken the pills. She also inquired about my virginity. I told her that I lost my virginity. And I explained to her when I lost my virginity, when I decided to lose my virginity because I was trying to be so much like the world, I lost my virginity as a young girl, as a 13-year-old girl, to a 26-year-old man who later I found out had a girlfriend, and it destroyed me, and I felt broken inside. But let me tell you how God can work everything out for your good. So my mother, she took me to the hospital, the mental facility. I later got transferred to a mental facility, and I was in isolation. And I remember, God is bringing this back to me. I remember while being in that place, knowing and hearing the voice of God saying that I am with you. And he's never left my side. So as I grew older, the depression, it didn't stop. Me trying to fit in with the world, it didn't stop. Indeed, it did not stop until this year. Until last week. And I continued to deal and put myself in these unusual, in these places where I wasn't supposed to be. I chased after men who rejected me. I had my heart broken. I became a single mother. I lost myself. I lost who God had created me to be. Actually, I didn't even know who I was because I spent my whole lifetime trying to be like the world. But can I tell you that God created us to be set apart? That God created us to be holy. And if you will seek his face, you will truly find the glory in which he has created us. God is such a good God, and he's so faithful, and he's so kind. So I want to say this was last Sunday. Yeah. No, it was 2 Sundays ago now. Wow. I went, God had been planting seeds in me. And I've always had a heart for God, but in a way I rejected him because I was never obedient to what he told me to do. I dishonored God, pushed him away for years and years and years, and said, yeah, God, I know you want to do what you want to do in my life, but I'm going to do what I want to do in my life because you gave us free will, right? Yeah, that's how we think sometimes. And I went to a church service a few weeks ago. This may have been about 3 weeks ago. And God met me there. And I fell on my face. And I felt him moving in my heart. At that moment, I didn't know what that was. At that moment, I couldn't quite put my finger on it because I still had a desire to please man. So I left that church service and I slept with a man. And that man eventually ended up breaking my heart, not even a few days later. And I remember crying on my bed and crying out to God and saying, God, my heart is shattered. My heart has been shattered for a long time. And Lord, I need you. I need you to make a way. God, I need you to be with me. God, I invite you into this brokenness space where I feel shattered. And do you know, God comforted me in that moment. A girl who thought that she was unworthy of God's love. He comforted me. And I felt the heaviness of the heartbreak that would normally destroy me and cause me to go back into depression and cause me to seek after more men and seek after more validation of men. It diminished. And my heart felt healed. And so I decided from that moment that I would be radically obedient to what God had told me to do. So every man that texted me, I did not respond. So every woman that texted me, because I had also fell into the spirit of homosexuality that was planted in me at a young age as well. I decided to stop. I made the decision to stop and to chase after God. And I said, God, I am going to hold on to you like never before. Even if I fall on my face 10 million times, I will chase after you. And that is where I have been. Radically obedient to God.